In the quiet early morning, when the world is still deciding if it wants to wake up, I sit by a wide window with a cup of warm tea in my hand and breathe in the soft gray light before the sun rises. This is always the moment I think about stories. Not the stories we read in books, but the stories we tell in small rooms, in busy offices, in classrooms, in team meetings, or even to one single person who looks at us and waits for a direction. This is how real leadership begins, not with rules or power, but with a story that moves someone's heart just a little. And today, in this long journey we share, I want to take you inside the world of storytelling for leaders, but in simple, friendly English so you can follow every word, every emotion, every image. Imagine I am speaking to you slowly, clearly, almost like a guide walking next to you through a quiet path in a forest. Nothing complex, nothing fast. Just one thought at a time, one feeling at a time, one story at a time. Because stories are the language of human connection, and leaders speak that language every day, even when they don't realize it. So let us begin with a simple picture. A young leader named Daniel who enters a room full of people for the first time. His hands shake just a little, not because he is weak, but because he cares. He wants to say the right words, he wants to show confidence, but above all, he wants to connect. And this is where his story begins, and maybe yours as well. Daniel was given a new role a few days ago. After years of working quietly behind the scenes, he was suddenly asked to lead a small team. It was a big step for him, and he spent many nights lying awake, thinking about how he would speak, how he would guide, and how he would tell his first real story as a leader. He didn't want his first meeting to feel like a long lecture, because he knew people rarely remember facts and instructions. But they do remember feelings. They remember how someone made them feel understood or inspired. So he spent the previous night not writing a plan, but remembering a moment from his own past, a moment that shaped him. And this is where storytelling truly begins, inside a memory. Maybe you have memories like this too. A memory that changed you, that taught you a lesson you never forgot. For Daniel, it was the memory of a small mountain he climbed as a child. Not a dangerous mountain, not a tall mountain, but a place his father took him when he was only 10 years old. That mountain became a symbol of a challenge that looked big at first, but felt different once he started the climb. He remembered the clear air, the smell of the pine trees, the sound of small stones rolling under his shoes, and the way his legs felt heavy halfway up. He remembered the moment he wanted to stop, the moment he thought he couldn't continue, and then the surprising feeling of reaching the top and seeing the world open wide in front of him. This was not a story about adventure. It was a story about belief, about the simple idea that you don't need to feel strong to begin. You become stronger as you go. When Daniel walked into the meeting room with this memory in his heart, he felt something shift inside him. His breath became slower, his shoulders relaxed, and he looked at the people in front of him with softness instead of fear. He didn't start with rules. He didn't start with plans. He didn't even start with his name. Instead, he said slowly, "I want to tell you a story from when I was 10 years old." The room became quiet. People leaned in. Their eyes softened. Their breathing slowed. This is the magic of storytelling. A good story always invites people to come closer. It creates a circle of attention where everyone feels included. As Daniel shared his memory of the small mountain, people smiled, nodded, and listened, not because the story was dramatic, but because it was real and human. When he finally reached the end, he looked around the room and said, "This year, we have a mountain to climb as a team. It may look big from here, but we will climb it one step at a time, and by the end, we will stand on top of it together." And in that moment, without giving any instructions, without using complicated words, without showing power or position, he became a leader. Because he used the oldest tool humans have, a story that brings meaning, not pressure. This is the heart of storytelling for leaders, and this is the journey we will travel together today. Now imagine yourself sitting across from Daniel as he tells this story. You listen slowly. You hear every word. And now I want you to do something simple. Imagine yourself telling a story of your own. You might think, but I am not a storyteller. Many people feel that way at the beginning. But that is not true. You have lived a life full of moments, full of small victories, full of lessons, full of surprises. You have stories inside you, waiting to be told. The only question is whether you know how to shape them into simple, clear, emotional messages that touch the listener. And that is what we will practice in this long journey: how to speak so people want to listen, how to listen so people want to speak, and how to use simple English that touches the heart. Let me take you deeper into this idea. Think of a leader you admire, someone from your life, your work, your family, or maybe even a public figure. Maybe they were not the loudest person in the room. Maybe they didn't speak fast or use big words. But there was something in the way they spoke that made you pay attention. Maybe it was their calm voice. Maybe it was the way they shared their own mistakes. Maybe it was the way their stories made you see the world differently. This is not an accident. This is storytelling. And you can learn to do it too. Leaders tell different types of stories. Some stories help people see a vision. Some stories build trust. Some stories create hope. Some stories help people understand a difficult moment. But the most powerful stories come from personal experience. Even a simple moment, like waiting for a bus in the rain or trying something new for the first time, can be a powerful leadership story if you tell it with honesty. The key is not the size of the event, but the meaning behind it. And meaning always comes from emotion. So let us go back to Daniel. After that first meeting, something unexpected happened. A team member walked up to him and said, "Your story about the mountain made me think about my own challenge from last year. I didn't believe I could finish a big project, but step by step, I did it. Thank you for reminding me." This moment showed Daniel something important. Storytelling doesn't only inspire, it opens a door for others to share their stories too. This is how teams become connected. One story becomes many stories. One voice becomes a shared voice. And this is what leaders create, a space for stories to grow. I want you to pause for a moment and think about your own experiences learning English. Maybe you felt nervous speaking in front of people. Maybe your heart beat fast. Maybe you forgot words. Maybe you felt embarrassed. These are normal feelings. Many people feel them. But imagine if you took one of those moments and turned it into a story. The story of how you learned to speak anyway, how you kept trying even when it felt hard, how you discovered that small progress is still progress. That story could inspire someone else who is afraid to speak. That story could be your first leadership story. Now imagine Daniel after a few weeks. His confidence grows. His voice becomes steadier. He starts using stories to guide his team through problems, through disagreements, through stressful moments. Instead of giving long explanations, he shares short stories that help people understand what he means. And slowly, his team begins to do the same. Meetings become smoother. Communication becomes clearer. People start listening with more attention. They begin to understand each other not only through logic but through emotion. One day, Daniel faces a real challenge. Two of his team members disagree strongly about the direction of a project. Their voices are tense, their emotions high, and the room feels heavy. Instead of choosing sides, instead of giving orders, Daniel takes a slow breath and tells a story. He shares a memory from childhood about two friends who built a treehouse together. They disagreed many times, even fought, but every time they stopped, stepped back, and remembered that they both wanted the same thing, to build something they were proud of. The story was simple, maybe even childish, but it carried a clear message. Focus on the shared goal, not the disagreement. After the story, the two team members looked at each other, sighed, and slowly relaxed. The disagreement didn't disappear, but the energy changed. The story softened the moment. And that is something leaders learn. Stories do not always solve problems, but they help create the space where solutions can appear. Now let me bring you into a deeper reflection. Why do stories work so well? Why do humans remember stories more easily than instructions? The answer is simple. Because stories speak to the heart before they speak to the mind. Our brains are built to remember emotions, images, sounds, and movements. And stories have all of these elements. When you hear a story, you imagine the scene. You feel the emotion. You connect the memory to your own experiences. That is why stories stay with us long after the moment passes. And this is also why storytelling helps you improve your English listening and speaking skills so quickly. When English becomes a story, simple, emotional, human, your brain relaxes. You understand more. You remember more. You speak more clearly. You begin to think in English, not word by word, but feeling by feeling. This is how real fluency grows. So now, as we reach the end of this first long section, I want to take you back to the quiet early morning where we began. The world is still waking up. The soft light is growing. And you sit with the feeling that you have begun a long and meaningful journey into storytelling for leaders. You have walked with Daniel. You have imagined your own stories. You have seen the power of simplicity. And maybe, just maybe, you have felt a spark inside, a small voice that says, maybe I can tell a story too. This is the beginning of transformation, and the story is only just starting. In the next section, we will go deeper into how leaders shape stories, how they choose moments, how they speak with emotion, and how they guide people with nothing more than words spoken with honesty. For now, take a slow breath, feel the calm in your body, and carry this first lesson with you. Every leader begins with a story, and today, you began yours. When we move into the second part of our journey together, imagine that you and I are walking through a quiet park just before sunset. The sky is soft orange, the wind is gentle, and the day feels like it is slowing down, giving us the perfect moment to look inside ourselves. Because if the first section was about understanding why stories matter, this section is about finding the story inside you, the story you already have but may not realize yet. Many learners think storytelling is something special that only creative people can do, but that is not true. Storytelling is not magic. Storytelling is memory, emotion, and meaning. Storytelling is life spoken out loud. Every person has hundreds of stories, small and big, quiet and loud, happy and difficult, but many people never take the time to look at them. Today, we will look together. And as we walk along this path in our imagination, I want you to let your mind stay open and relaxed, ready to discover the stories that leadership asks you to tell. Imagine a bench by the side of the path, and we sit down slowly. You look around and notice that every person passing by has a story inside them. The man jogging with his dog has a story about the first time he ran a marathon. The older woman walking with a cane has a story about the day she learned she needed help but still chose to smile. The child holding her mother's hand has a story about her first day of school and how she felt brave for the first time. And you also carry stories like these. But leaders choose certain stories, the ones that help others see, understand, and feel. And to choose, you must first know what those stories are. So let us explore the story of Daniel again, the leader from the first section. A few weeks after his first team meeting, he realized that storytelling was becoming a new tool in his life. But he also realized something important. He could not repeat the same mountain story forever. A good leader needs a collection of stories, not just one. So he began to look into his own life for new stories he could tell. At first, He felt unsure. I don't have exciting stories, he thought. My life is normal. I haven't climbed big mountains. I haven't saved anyone. I haven't traveled the world. Many people feel this way. Maybe you do too. But Daniel was wrong, just like many of us. Because leadership storytelling is not about exciting events, it is about meaningful moments. And meaningful moments are everywhere if you know how to look. So one evening, after work, Daniel made a cup of tea and sat by his window. He watched the city lights come on slowly. And then he asked himself a simple question. What moments in my life taught me something important? At first, nothing came. His mind felt blank. But then he remembered something small, a moment from university, many years ago, when he failed an exam he had prepared for with great effort. At that time, he felt disappointed, embarrassed, and uncertain. He thought it was the end of something important. But later, he realized that failure was not a final stop, it was a direction change. It taught him resilience. It taught him to ask for help. It taught him that he did not need to be perfect, he needed to keep going. That memory carried a message: value effort, not perfection. And that message could help his team too. He wrote the story down in a small notebook. And once he wrote it, another story appeared. He remembered the first time he helped a new colleague learn a difficult task and how he surprised himself by being patient and kind when he expected himself to be nervous. That story carried the message: you are more capable than you think. And again, that was a message worth sharing. And then more stories came. The story of losing confidence when he moved to a new city, the story of working on a difficult project that later became his proudest success, the story of learning to listen before speaking. Each of these stories held a lesson, a feeling, a piece of truth that could help someone else. And this is where I want to guide you now. I want you to imagine that notebook in Daniel's hands. But this time, place the notebook in your own hands. Imagine opening it slowly. The pages are blank, waiting for you. And I want you to ask yourself the same question he asked. What moments in my life taught me something important? Do not worry about English. Do not worry about words. Think only about moments. Think about the time you made a difficult decision. Think about the time you felt afraid but continued. Think about the time someone helped you or you helped someone. Think about the time you made a mistake that taught you something. Think about the time you discovered your own strength. These are your leadership stories. Leadership is not about being perfect. Leadership is about being human and honest. And stories show your humanity more clearly than anything else. As we continue our imaginary walk through this park, the sun is lower now. The light is soft and golden. We stand up and walk a little more. And I tell you something that every good storyteller knows. Stories live inside emotion. You cannot tell a story without emotion, because emotion is what makes the memory alive. But you do not need big dramatic emotions. Simple emotions are enough: surprise, worry, hope, fear, joy, disappointment, pride. When you feel something, your listener feels it too. And when a leader shares their emotion honestly, people trust them more. So when you look for stories inside yourself, look for the moments where you felt something real. Daniel discovered this when he told his first failure story to his team. It was a small meeting, a planning session where people seemed tired and stressed. The project was falling behind schedule. People felt uncertain. They were losing confidence. So Daniel decided to tell his own story about failing an exam. He spoke slowly, simply, with honesty. He told them how he felt embarrassed, how he questioned himself, how he almost gave up, and then how he tried again, step by step. As he spoke, people lifted their heads. Their faces softened. Their eyes showed recognition. Many of them had experienced failure too. And suddenly, the feeling in the room changed. People began to share their own difficulties. They laughed gently at their past mistakes. They began to feel human again. And in that moment, Daniel realized something important. Storytelling creates safety. When a leader is open, others feel safe to be open too. Let me bring you deeper into this idea. When people follow a leader, they follow not only the leader's decisions, but also the leader's humanity. They want to feel that the leader understands them, feels what they feel, and knows the challenges they face. Logical instructions may organize the mind, but stories touch the heart. And leadership that ignores the heart is leadership that struggles. But leadership that speaks to the heart becomes strong and lasting. So here is a picture for you. Imagine standing in front of a small group of people, maybe your colleagues, maybe your students, maybe your friends, maybe your family. Imagine you want to guide them through a difficult moment. You take a slow breath. You remember a simple moment from your life when you faced something similar. And you share it with calm, with honesty, with no complicated words. When you do that, you are not showing weakness. You're showing courage. You're showing connection. You're showing leadership. And the story you tell becomes a bridge between you and the people listening. Let us return to our walk with Daniel, because his journey mirrors the journey many new leaders face. A few months into his role, his team faced a challenge that felt bigger than anything before. A critical project was at risk, deadlines were tight, and stress filled the office like a heavy cloud. People were frustrated. Communication broke down. Mistakes were happening. And Daniel himself felt pressure growing inside his chest. He wanted to encourage his team. He wanted to remind them why their work mattered. But every time he tried to speak, his words felt technical and lifeless. Until he remembered something. Stories bring meaning to moments that feel heavy. That night, he went home early, opened his. The next morning, Daniel called a short meeting. The team looked tired. Their shoulders were heavy. Their eyes were dull. And instead of giving instructions, Daniel told the story of his sister's bicycle. As he spoke, people leaned back in their chairs. Some smiled. Some closed their eyes as if imagining the small girl beside him. And when he finished, he said softly, "We are like my sister learning to ride. We will fall. We will get tired. But every try builds our strength. And we will succeed if we keep going." Something in the room shifted. People breathed differently. The story didn't solve the project problem immediately, but it changed the energy. And energy is often the first step to progress. Now let us pause for a moment. I want you to feel the rhythm of this kind of storytelling. Notice how simple the words are. Notice how real the moment is. Notice how the emotion is gentle, not dramatic. Notice how the message grows naturally from the story. You do not need special vocabulary to tell a good leadership story. You need clarity. You need honesty. You need feeling. And you need to understand the message you want to share. So in this calm sunset walk, I want you to imagine another scene. Imagine you are writing your own leadership notebook. You open the first page and you write 3 questions, simple questions that help you find the stories inside you. The first question is, when did I learn something important? That is where many strong leadership stories live. The second question is, when did I feel something deeply fear, joy, sadness, hope, or surprise? Emotion makes a story alive. The third question is, what message can this memory give to someone else? Because leadership stories always carry meaning. These questions are your tools. They help you discover stories you may have forgotten. And every story you discover becomes a small light you can use to guide others. As we reach the end of this long section, imagine the sun finally touching the horizon. The sky changes into deep gold, then soft pink, then slowly into blue. You feel calm. You feel thoughtful. You feel open. And perhaps something small inside you feels ready to explore your own stories, ready to speak more clearly, ready to lead with honesty. You have walked beside Daniel. You have walked inside your own memories. And now you understand something important. Leaders do not wait for big stories. Leaders find meaning in small moments. Leaders turn simple memories into powerful messages. And you can do the same. In the next section, we will explore how to shape your story, how to build your message, and how to speak with clarity so your listener feels every moment. But for now, hold this quiet feeling with you. The story you need is already inside you, waiting to be told. When we begin this third part of our long journey together, imagine that you and I are sitting in a small, warm room with soft light coming from a single lamp in the corner. The world outside is quiet, almost distant, like a gentle hum behind closed windows. This is the kind of space where ideas can grow safely, where thoughts have room to stretch and breathe, where stories can take shape without fear. Because in this section, we are not only discovering stories, we are learning how to shape them, how to structure them, how to speak them in simple, clear English so that people lean in and follow every word. You see, every story is like a block of raw stone at the beginning, full of potential but not yet clear. Leadership requires you to gently carve that stone, to find the shape inside it, to bring out the meaning, the emotion, the message, and the voice. And that voice, your voice, is the most important part of this journey. Imagine Daniel again, the young leader we have been following. He now has a notebook full of memories, each one holding a lesson he wants to share. But even with many stories, he faces a new challenge. He does not know how to shape them. Sometimes when he speaks, he talks too long. Sometimes he jumps from one idea to another. Sometimes he loses the emotional thread. Sometimes he uses too many details and the main message gets lost. And sometimes the story becomes too short, too quick, too flat. This is normal. Many storytellers struggle with this, especially at the beginning. But the secret is simple. Storytelling is not about telling everything. Storytelling is about choosing the right things. Imagine a photograph. A good photograph does not show everything in the world. It shows one scene, one moment, one feeling. That is what makes it beautiful. Stories are the same. A good story chooses one moment that carries meaning. It does not try to say too much. It says just enough to touch the heart. So one evening, after a long day of meetings, Daniel sits at his table with a pencil in his hand and decides to practice shaping a story. He chooses a memory from his notebook, the moment he moved to a new city. This was a difficult time for him. He felt lost, alone, uncertain. He struggled to find his place. But over time, he learned to adapt. He made new friends, discovered new strengths, and grew in confidence. This story holds an important message about adaptation, courage, and growth. So Daniel wants to share it with his team. But before he tells it, he must shape it. And shaping a story begins with something simple, asking, what is the heart of this story? He writes that question at the top of the page. Then he thinks. He remembers all the emotions he felt, the loneliness, the confusion, the quiet nights when he sat in his room missing home, the mornings when he woke up determined to try again. He remembers the day he met the first person who became his friend in the new city, the moment his heart felt lighter. There are many details in this memory, many small moments. But he knows he cannot tell all of them. So he asks himself again, what is the heart of this story? And slowly, the answer becomes clear. The heart is courage, the courage to face something unfamiliar even when you feel small. Once he understands the heart, the story begins to take shape. And shaping a story requires 3 simple steps that many leaders use, even if they don't realize it. First, the beginning must invite the listener into the world of the story. It must paint a scene, create a mood, open a door. The middle must show the challenge, the tension, the difficulty, the moment when something must change. And the end must show the realization, the learning, the transformation. This is not a rule. It is simply the natural flow of human experience. Every memory has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So every story does too. Daniel begins by imagining how he will open his story. He decides to start with a simple picture, him standing at the train station with 2 bags in his hands, looking at a city he doesn't know. That image is clear. It is emotional. It gives the listener something to imagine. Then he thinks about the middle. He remembers the first few days when he felt invisible in this big city, when people walked past him like he did not exist, when he felt too shy to ask for help. Those were the challenging moments. And then he thinks about the ending. The moment that changed everything was when he asked a coworker if they wanted to have lunch together, even though he felt nervous. That moment opened a new chapter in his life. He was not alone anymore. And that small moment taught him something important. Courage does not always look big. Sometimes courage is simply a small choice made with a shaking hand. Now imagine Daniel standing in front of his team, ready to tell this story. Imagine the room around him, people sitting quietly, waiting for him to speak. He takes a slow breath. He remembers the heart of his story. He remembers the image of the train station. And with a soft voice, he begins. When I first moved to this city, he says, I stood at the train station with 2 bags and a heart full of fear. As he speaks, he does not rush. He does not try to impress. He simply allows the story to unfold, one moment at a time. And the more he speaks, the more connected the room becomes. But shaping a story is not only about structure. It is also about voice your voice. And the voice of a leader telling a story must be simple, warm, and honest. Many people misunderstand leadership and think it requires a strong, loud, powerful voice. But strong leadership storytelling often comes from quiet strength, from calm presence, from gentle confidence. The goal is not to sound perfect. The goal is to sound real. Imagine your own voice now. Imagine speaking slowly, clearly, with warmth. Imagine sharing a story not to impress people, but to connect with them. This is the voice that moves hearts. This is the voice that builds trust. This is the voice that people follow. So let us practice together in this quiet room. Imagine you are preparing to tell a story from your own life. It might be a story about the first time you tried something difficult, or a story about a mistake you made, or a story about someone who changed your life. Imagine the moment clearly. Now imagine speaking it slowly, one idea at a time, in simple English. You do not need big vocabulary. You do not need complex sentences. You need clarity, emotion, and connection. You might say, I want to tell you about a moment when I felt lost, or I want to share something that taught me a lesson, or there was a day when everything changed for me. These simple beginnings open the listener's heart. Now imagine going deeper. Imagine describing the scene with gentle details, not too many, not too few. Just enough to help the listener feel the moment. You might say, I was standing alone, or the room felt too quiet, or the air was cold, or my hands were shaking. These small details bring the story to life. They paint a picture in the listener's mind. They create emotional connection. And then, as you move into the challenge part of your story, imagine speaking honestly about your feelings. Many people avoid sharing their true emotions because they fear judgment. But leaders who share emotions create trust. You might say, I felt afraid, or I didn't know what to do, or I felt embarrassed, or I wanted to give up. These simple words create understanding. They show vulnerability. And vulnerable leaders are often the ones people follow the most. Then imagine reaching the moment of change in your story, the realization, the lesson. This is the moment when the story opens. The moment when the listener understands the message. You might say, but then something changed, or that moment taught me, or I realized something important, or that day showed me who I could become. These small phrases guide the listener gently toward the meaning of the story. And meaning is what makes a leadership story powerful. And finally, imagine ending your story with a soft reflection. Something like, "And that is why I want to share this with you," or "This moment still guides me today," or "I learned that courage can be small," or "This story helps me remember what is important." This reflection brings the story into the present moment. It connects the past with the present. It shows the listener why the story matters now. As we sit in this warm room, let me tell you something important. Shaping your story is not only about helping others. It also helps you understand yourself. When you choose a story, you choose a moment of your life that changed you. When you shape a story, you give that moment meaning. When you tell a story, you free that meaning so it can guide someone else. Leadership is not about control. Leadership is about offering meaning. And stories are the most human form of meaning we have. Let me take you back to Daniel again. After he told the story of moving to a new city, something interesting happened. One of his team members, a quiet person named Lien, approached him and said softly, "I moved here last year. I felt the same way. Thank you for sharing." That small moment created a bond between them. That bond made their work together smoother, more natural. And that is what storytelling does. It creates invisible bridges between people. Bridges made from understanding. Bridges made from shared humanity. Over time, Daniel became better at shaping stories. He learned to speak slowly. He learned to choose simple words. He learned to focus on one message at a time. He learned to let silence breathe between sentences. Silence is part of storytelling too. Silence gives the listener time to feel. Silence gives the storyteller time to breathe. Silence gives the message time to land softly in the heart. So now, as we near the end of this long section, imagine standing up from the chair and walking to the window. Outside, the world is dark now. The city lights glow like stars on the ground. And in this quiet moment, you understand something important. You already have stories. You already have memories full of meaning. You already have a voice that can guide others. And now you know how to shape your stories with structure, with emotion, with clarity, with honesty. You know how to speak like a leader who leads with heart. In the next section, we will explore how to use stories in real conversations, real meetings, real challenges, how to speak at the right moment, how to listen deeply, and how to create change with your words. But for now, take a slow breath, feel the calm inside you, and carry this realization. Your voice, shaped by your stories, is more powerful than you think. As we enter this fourth part of our long journey together, imagine that you and I are sitting at a round wooden table in a quiet cafe. The sound around us is soft and warm, gentle conversations, cups touching the table, the soft hum of coffee being made behind the counter. The air smells like roasted beans and fresh pastries. Outside the window, people walk slowly under a soft morning light. Everything feels calm, comfortable, safe. This is the perfect space to explore something leaders often forget. Storytelling is not only about speaking, it is also about listening. It is about sensing the right moment, understanding the right time, hearing what people feel even when they do not say it. Leadership is a dance between speaking and silence, between guiding others and letting others guide you. And stories flow through that dance like music. In this section, we will enter the real world of leadership conversation, moments when people disagree, moments when people feel lost, moments when teams need guidance, and moments when individuals need encouragement. And we will see how storytelling and deep listening work together to create trust, clarity, and connection. Now imagine Daniel again, the young leader whose journey has grown step by step beside yours. After months of practice, his storytelling has become more natural. His voice has become calmer. His stories carry emotion and meaning. But leadership is not about telling many stories. It is about telling the right story at the right moment. And this is where Daniel faces a new challenge. One morning, he walks into the office and senses something is wrong. The atmosphere feels heavy. People look tired and frustrated. Whispers fill the air. Small disagreements appear in the corners of the room. Body language is stiff. The energy is low. Daniel knows something is happening beneath the surface, something deeper than simple work stress. But no one says anything directly. This is a moment when many leaders make the same mistake. They talk too soon. They try to fix things without understanding them. They fill the room with instructions instead of understanding the emotion inside it. But Daniel has grown. He has learned that leadership begins with listening, and listening begins with silence. So Daniel walks slowly through the room, greeting people with a gentle smile, offering small questions, observing carefully. He notices the way his team members avoid looking at each other. He notices the tension in their shoulders. He notices their deep sighs. And instead of speaking, he listens with his eyes, with his mind, with his heart. Finally, he invites everyone to a short meeting. Not a long meeting, not a formal meeting, just a moment to breathe together. When everyone arrives, the room feels tight, full of unsaid words. Daniel does not start with a story. He starts with silence. He looks around softly and says, "I feel something heavy in the room today. Can we talk about it?" This one simple sentence opens a door. People look at each other. Someone finally says, "We are tired." Another person adds, "We feel lost." Someone else whispers, "We don't know if we can reach the deadline." These small voices create space. And Daniel listens. He does not judge. He does not interrupt. He does not defend. He listens patiently, letting every voice express its fear and frustration. Listening like this is not easy. Many leaders feel pressure to respond quickly, to solve problems immediately, to show strength by speaking fast. But real strength appears in slow listening. The power of a leader is not in how much they speak, but in how deeply they understand. Daniel listens until the room becomes quiet again. And only then does he know the right moment to speak. And when he speaks, he does not give instructions. He tells a story. He begins with a soft voice. "I once tried to build a small table with my father when I was a child." The team looks up. Their faces soften. The mood shifts gently. "We thought it would take one afternoon," he says. But the table shook. The legs were uneven. "We fixed one thing, and something else broke. At one point, I looked at the table and said, 'This is impossible.' And my father said, 'We will take a break. Then we will look at it again with new eyes.' That is what we did. When we came back, the table still had problems, but we saw something we had missed before. We fixed it step by step. And at the end, the table stood strong." When Daniel finishes this simple story, he lets silence sit in the room again. And then he says softly, "Maybe today, we also need to step back and look again with new eyes." His team breathes out. The pressure in the room melts, just a little. Some people nod. Someone smiles. The story does not magically solve the deadline problem, but it changes how people feel about it. And feelings guide actions. Storytelling at the right moment can shift a whole team's energy. But the right moment only appears when you listen deeply. This is the balance leaders learn to master: speaking with purpose, listening with presence. And listening does not only happen with your ears. Listening happens with your eyes. When someone fidgets nervously, you listen. When someone avoids looking at you, you listen. When someone speaks less than usual, you listen. Listening also happens with your heart. When you sense something unspoken, when you feel tension in the air, when you notice someone's silence, it all counts. Leadership listening is like reading a quiet book that has no words printed, only feelings written between the lines. Now imagine yourself sitting in this cafe with me. Imagine the people around us speaking softly. Imagine the warm light. Let me ask you something important. How do you listen? Do you listen only to answer? Or do you listen to understand? Do you listen with patience? Or do you listen with pressure in your mind? Do you listen to confirm your own ideas? Or do you listen to explore someone else's reality? Your answers shape the kind of leader you become. Leaders who listen deeply make people feel safe. And when people feel safe, they speak honestly. They share ideas. They work better. They trust more. They follow with their hearts, not only their minds. Now let us follow Daniel again. Weeks pass, and he becomes more comfortable with this dance between speaking and listening. But soon, he faces a new situation, one that requires something more delicate, guiding two people who no longer trust each other. It begins with a small disagreement between two team members, Maya and Jonas. A simple misunderstanding grows into frustration. Frustration grows into anger. And anger grows into silence. They stop asking each other questions. They start working separately. The whole team feels the tension. The project slows down. And Daniel knows he must help them reconnect. But he cannot solve it by telling a story too early. He must listen first. So he invites Maya and Jonas into a small meeting room. The air feels thick. They sit far apart. Their expressions are cold. Daniel begins softly, "I want to understand what happened." He listens as Maya speaks about feeling ignored. He listens as Jonas speaks about feeling blamed. He listens to their voices shaking a little. He listens to their pain. And as he listens, something becomes clear. They are not angry at each other. They are disappointed, hurt, tired. When they finish, Daniel pauses. And only after that pause does he offer a story, not to teach them, but to help them see the situation differently. He begins, "When I was young, I had two friends who played music together. One day, they argued about a song. One wanted to change the melody. The other wanted to keep it the same. They stopped talking for days. And the music stopped too. One afternoon, I found them sitting far apart, both sad. And I said, maybe the problem is not the song. Maybe the problem is forgetting why you wanted to make music together in the first place." They stayed quiet for a long time. Then they finally talked. Not about the song, but about why their friendship mattered. As Daniel finishes the story, Maya and Jonas look at each other, their faces a little softer, their eyes a little less tense. The story reminds them that behind the disagreement, there is something more important: the shared goal, the shared work, the shared trust that needs repairing. This is the power of stories told at the right moment. They bypass the ego and speak directly to the heart. They make people remember the big picture. They bring people back to connection. But again, the story works only because Daniel listened first. Listening makes the story meaningful. Listening makes the timing right. Listening makes the message land gently. Now imagine yourself in a similar situation. Imagine someone at work, in your family, or in your life feels stressed, frustrated, or silent. Imagine you sense something inside them, something they are not saying. In that moment, remember this: leadership begins when you pause, when you breathe, when you choose silence before speech. You might ask gently, "How are you feeling?" or "What happened?" or "Do you want to talk about it?" or "I am here to understand, not to judge." These small sentences open doors. And doors must be opened before stories can walk through them. As our time together in this cafe continues, let me guide you into another important idea. Storytelling for leaders is not only about big moments. It is also about small, everyday moments. Moments of motivation, moments of teaching, moments of encouragement. For example, imagine a team member who doubts their ability. They hesitate. They shrink. They speak softly. They say, "I don't think I can do this." Many leaders respond with instructions or praise. But sometimes what that person needs is a story, one that shows they are not alone, one that shows that doubt is normal, one that shows that growth comes slowly. Imagine you tell that person a small story from your own experience. "There was a day when I felt the same way. I doubted myself. I was afraid. But I tried, and slowly I grew." This story is simple, but to someone who feels small, it can feel like a warm hand on the shoulder. Stories like this do not push people, they lift people. Leadership also includes celebrating progress. Imagine your team finishes a difficult task. Instead of simply saying, "Good job," imagine sharing a small story that connects their work to something meaningful. "This reminds me of the time," or "Watching you work through this challenge makes me think of." Such stories make people feel seen. And people who feel seen work with heart. Now, let us step back from the cafe and imagine walking outside into the bright morning light. The air feels fresh. The world feels clear. And I want to remind you of something important. Leadership storytelling is not about creating perfect words. It is about creating honest connection. And honest connection begins with presence. When you speak, be present. When you listen, be present. When you tell a story, be present. When you guide someone, be present. Presence is the quiet power behind leadership. People feel it even if you never mention it. So, as we near the end of this long section, I want you to imagine Daniel standing by the window of his office, looking at his team working peacefully again. The tension has softened. The energy has returned. The small conflicts have transformed into understanding. And he knows now that storytelling works best when it grows from listening. Leaders who listen deeply tell better stories. Leaders who tell meaningful stories create deeper trust. And trust builds teams in ways instructions alone never can. Take a slow breath as you stand with Daniel in your imagination. Look at the world through his eyes. Feel the calm in the room around him. And carry this reflection with you. Leadership is not about speaking first. Leadership is about listening first. Leadership is not about controlling the moment. Leadership is about understanding the moment. And stories are the gentle bridge between understanding and action. In the next section, the final chapter of our journey, you and I will explore how leaders use storytelling to inspire long-term growth, how stories shape culture, how stories strengthen identity, and how your voice can become a light for others long after your words are spoken. But for now, hold this thought gently. When you speak with purpose and listen with depth, you become the kind of leader people remember. As we enter the final part of our long journey together, imagine that you and I are standing at the top of a quiet hill just before nightfall. The sky above us is slowly turning from gold to deep blue, and the soft evening wind carries the smell of grass and distant fireplaces. Below us, the lights of a small town begin to glow, tiny but warm, like memories shining inside the heart. This is the perfect place to look back, to breathe deeply, and to understand what our journey has really been about. In these last hours together, we step into the final and most powerful idea of leadership storytelling, the story you leave behind. Because leadership is not only about guiding people in the moment. Leadership is about shaping how people remember you, how they remember themselves because of you, and how they grow long after your voice is gone. This is legacy, not the kind made out of monuments or awards, but the quiet legacy made out of words, moments, encouragement, and truth. And storytelling is the tool that creates this legacy in the hearts of people. Imagine Daniel again, the young leader whose journey has walked beside yours from the first page until now. Months have passed. His confidence has grown. His team has transformed. The atmosphere in his workplace is now full of calm energy and trust. People share ideas more openly. Problems are solved more quickly. And the team feels like a community instead of a collection of individuals. This change did not happen because Daniel had the perfect plans or the highest position. It happened because he learned to tell stories that connected people, stories that helped them understand themselves, stories that reminded them of their strengths and shared purpose. But now, Daniel faces the biggest leadership moment of all, a moment of change, a moment of transition, a moment when he must guide not only actions but hearts. His company is planning a major transformation, a shift in direction, a new vision, a new beginning that will challenge everyone. And Daniel knows that this is the moment when leaders are truly tested. In times of change, people do not need more information, they need meaning. They need a story that helps them understand where they are going and why it matters. So Daniel spends a long evening sitting at his desk, thinking quietly. The office is empty. The lights are dim. He looks at his notebook full of stories and wonders which story can guide his team through this big moment. As he reflects, his mind returns to a memory from childhood, a story he has never shared before, a story that changed him deeply. It was the story of a summer day when he and his father went into a forest to plant a young tree. The tree was small and fragile, barely the height of Daniel's chest. The soil was dry. The sun was strong. And Daniel asked his father, "Why plant a tree so small? It looks too weak." His father smiled and said, "Because we are not planting it for today. We are planting it for the future. One day it will grow tall. People we will never meet will sit under its shade." At the time, Daniel didn't fully understand. But years later, when he visited the same forest and saw the tree grown tall and strong, he realized the truth. Some actions in life are not for us, they are for the people who come after us. That memory stayed with him, and now, as he prepares to guide his team, he knows this is the story they need. The next morning, Daniel calls a meeting. The room fills with quiet tension. The team knows change is coming, and change often brings fear. People look uncertain, worried about what will happen to their work, their roles, their routines. Daniel stands at the front of the room with his notebook closed in his hands. He looks at each person with gentle confidence. And then he begins the story of the little tree. He speaks slowly, letting every word travel around the room. He describes the forest, the dry soil, the small tree standing alone, his confusion as a child, and his father's calm smile. When he reaches the moment of realization, the moment the tree grew tall years later, the room becomes exceptionally still. Everyone listens with full attention. And then Daniel connects the story to the present. "We're about to begin something new," he says softly. "It will feel small at first. It may feel fragile. It may feel uncertain. But one day, this new direction will grow into something strong. We are not doing this only for ourselves. We are building something for the future, something meaningful, something lasting." The energy in the room shifts. The tension softens. People breathe. And slowly, hope begins to rise like the evening lights in the town below us. This is the heart of leadership, offering a vision wrapped in a story, offering meaning instead of pressure, offering calm instead of fear. Leaders do not control the outcome, but they shape the feeling. They shape the belief. They shape the story people tell themselves when they face difficulty. And the stories leaders tell become the stories teams repeat to each other. These stories shape culture, identity, and future. Now imagine yourself in Daniel's place. Imagine standing in front of people who look to you for guidance. You may not be a manager or a director. You may be a teacher, a parent, a mentor, a friend, or simply someone others trust. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is influence. Leadership is kindness. Leadership is courage. Leadership is storytelling. Imagine speaking slowly. Imagine sharing a story that comes from your heart. Imagine offering comfort, clarity, or hope through a simple memory. Imagine how people around you might feel understood, supported, inspired. In that moment, you are not just telling a story, you are shaping someone's future. And that is the quiet legacy leaders leave behind. Let us walk deeper into this idea. Imagine that your life is a long path with many turning points. Each turning point holds a story of struggle, a story of growth, a story of discovery. When you share these stories with others, you give them a map. You show them that difficulties can be overcome, that confusion can lead to clarity, that fear can become courage, that small efforts become big changes. This is how leaders plant trees in the hearts of others, trees that will grow long after the conversation ends. Now imagine Daniel several months after the big change. His team has adapted. They have created new systems, new ideas, new ways of working. It was not easy. There were setbacks, mistakes, moments of doubt. But whenever the team felt lost, they remembered the story of the little tree. They remembered that growth takes time. They remembered that small steps create strong roots. They remembered that their work was part of something bigger than the present moment. And that story guided them like a quiet, gentle compass. One afternoon, as the project reaches an important milestone, the team gathers in the break room. They laugh, they talk, they share memories of the difficult days. And someone says, "We did it. Little by little, we did it." Another person adds, "The tree is growing." These simple sentences show the true power of leadership storytelling. Stories become part of how people speak, think, and act. Stories become a shared language. Stories become culture. Now imagine you sitting beside us on this hilltop as night slowly arrives. The sky above is dark but filled with stars. I want to ask you something simple. What story will you leave behind? What story will people remember when they think of you? What story will someone repeat because your words helped them through a difficult moment? You don't need to know the answer now, but you can begin to shape it. Every time you speak kindly, every time you listen deeply, every time you share a memory with honesty, every time you choose calm over fear, you write another line in the story people will remember. Leadership storytelling is not a technique. It is a way of being. It is a way of seeing the world through meaning, through connection, through humanity. And you have already begun this journey. You have walked through the early morning with us. You have walked through parks, cafes, quiet rooms, and office spaces in your imagination. You have followed Daniel's story and discovered your own. You have learned how to find the stories inside you, how to shape them, how to speak with clarity and emotion, how to listen with depth and compassion, how to guide others with gentle strength, and how to leave a legacy that lives in the hearts of the people who hear your voice. So now, as we stand together under the night sky, I want to leave you with one final image. Imagine a long, empty field. Imagine walking into the middle of it with a small seed in your hand. You dig a tiny hole in the soil. You place the seed inside. And you cover it gently. That seed is your story. It may feel small. It may feel simple. It may feel too quiet. But one day it will grow. Someone will hear it at the right moment. Someone will carry its message in their heart. Someone will remember your voice when they need courage. Someone will use your story to guide someone else. And in that way, your influence will travel farther than you can see. This is the legacy of a storyteller. This is the legacy of a leader. This is the legacy you are building slowly, gently, honestly, one story at a time. And as we end this journey together, I want you to close your eyes and take one slow breath. Feel the calm inside you. Feel the strength you have discovered. Feel the stories you carry. And know this: the world needs your voice. Not a perfect voice. Not a loud voice. A human voice. A warm voice. A voice that understands. A voice that guides. a voice that leaves behind stories that help others grow. And so, our journey reaches its final moment. The stars above shine quietly. The town below glows softly. And you stand ready, not only to speak English with more confidence, not only to understand stories more clearly, but to lead with heart, with purpose, and with your own story. And that is the most powerful skill any leader can have.